Marcus Chen checked his appearance one last time in the reflective surface of the shuttle window. His simple gray suit was wrinkle-free, his notes organized neatly in his worn leather folder. This meeting could change everything, not just for him, but for struggling human colonies across 3 star systems. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud at Elysium Station, the gleaming orbital habitat that served as the crown jewel of the Galactic Consortium's territory. As the airlock cycled open, Marcus stepped into a world of luxury that few humans ever witnessed. Polished marble floors stretched beneath soaring ceilings. Floating holo advertisements showcased the latest spacecraft models, each one more expensive than what most Earth families earned in a decade. Around him, the wealthy elite of a dozen alien species browsed and chatted, their translators humming softly as they discussed the merits of different propulsion systems. Marcus straightened his shoulders and walked purposefully toward the Xelarian luxury spacecraft dealership at the far end of the concourse. His heart raced, but his steps remained steady. 6 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and his grandmother's life savings had brought him here. "You can do this," he whispered to himself, clutching the schematics for his revolutionary warp drive modifications. The designs would increase efficiency by 340% while cutting rare mineral requirements by half. It could make space travel affordable for the masses instead of just the privileged few. As he approached the dealership's entrance, a tall, slender Xelarian in an immaculate white suit looked up from his console. The alien's silver eyes narrowed slightly, his 3-fingered hand pausing over the holographic display. "Welcome to Xelarian Luxury Craft," the manager said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into crisp, slightly accented English. "How may I assist you today?" Marcus extended his hand. "Marcus Chen, independent engineer from Earth's Southern District. I have an appointment to discuss my warp drive modifications." The manager didn't take his hand. Instead, he tapped something on his console and frowned. "Identification, please," he said, his tone cooling noticeably. Marcus placed his ID chip on the scanner. The manager's eyes flicked over the information displayed before him. The slight widening of his pupils and the subtle blue flush at the tips of his head tendrils told Marcus everything he needed to know. "Earth origin. Southern District," the manager said flatly. "I see." Around them, several wealthy patrons glanced over, their private conversations pausing. A Centaurian couple whispered behind jeweled hands, their 6 eyes blinking in amusement. "My appointment was confirmed 3 weeks ago," Marcus said, keeping his voice level. "I'm here to present new drive technology that could revolutionize your—" "I'm afraid there has been a mistake," the manager interrupted, making a subtle gesture with his hand. 2 security guards materialized from a side door. "We don't typically entertain proposals from Earth's lower districts." One of the guards, a burly Krell with scaled armor plating, moved closer. "Sir, this establishment is for paying customers only." "But I have an appointment," Marcus insisted, pulling up the confirmation on his outdated tablet. "Look, right here." The manager barely glanced at it. "Anyone can falsify documents. Now, please leave quietly before this becomes uncomfortable." The second guard took Marcus by the elbow. The grip wasn't painful, but it was firm enough to make resistance futile. "You don't understand," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly as they began moving him toward the exit. "These designs could cut costs by half and increase range by—" "We cater to a certain clientele," the manager called after him. "Our customers expect quality." The wealthy patrons watching the scene unfold laughed softly, entertained by the spectacle of an Earth human being escorted out. A young Andromedan child pointed, asking his parent a question that made the adult chuckle and shake their head. The guards pushed Marcus through the dealership doors, back into the main concourse. His precious schematics spilled from his folder, scattering across the polished floor. As he scrambled to collect them, one of the guards placed a heavy boot deliberately on a page. "Earth rats don't belong in Elysium," he sneered. Know your place. Minutes later, Marcus sat silently on the return shuttle, watching Elysium Station's perfect glittering sphere grow smaller through the viewport. His hands trembled slightly as he straightened his crumpled designs. 6 years of work, dismissed without even being seen. In the reflection of the window, he caught sight of his grandmother's pendant hanging from his neck, a simple piece of polished meteorite she'd found during Earth's first colony days. "We reach for the stars because that's where we belong," she always said. As the shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, Marcus made a silent promise. The rejection burned in his chest, transforming from humiliation into something harder, more determined. "I'll be back," he whispered to the stars. "And next time, you'll have no choice but to see me." The sound of rain pattered against the thin metal roof of Marcus's apartment in Earth's southern district. 3 months had passed since his humiliation at Elysium Station, but the memory remained sharp as a blade. He hunched over his workbench, surrounded by salvaged parts and flickering holographic diagrams that cast a blue glow across his tired face. His apartment was small, just one room that served as bedroom, kitchen, and workshop. The walls were covered with technical diagrams and faded photos of his parents, both lost in the colonial wars when he was just a child. His grandmother had raised him after that, teaching him to find value in what others discarded. "Marcus, you need to eat something," his grandmother called from the small kitchen area. At 84, Mei Chen moved slowly now, her once straight back bent with age, but her mind remained sharp as ever. "Just a little longer, Gran," Marcus muttered, adjusting a microscopic component with steady hands. Mei sighed and brought a bowl of simple rice and vegetables to his workbench. "The food can't wait, even if the universe can." Marcus smiled faintly and paused his work. As he ate, his grandmother examined his latest prototype, a fusion core the size of a fist that glowed with faint purple light. "Will this be the one?" she asked, her weathered hands hovering near but not touching the delicate equipment. "It's getting closer," Marcus said between bites. "The problem isn't the theory. I know it works, but I need better materials than what we can get down here." Mei nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandfather used to say that Earth's greatest resource was never minerals or energy, it was human ingenuity." After dinner, while his grandmother rested, Marcus returned to work. Night blended into morning, morning into afternoon. Days passed in a blur of calculations and failed attempts. Each failure taught him something new, and slowly the design evolved. 2 weeks later, Mei's health took a sudden turn. Marcus found her one morning, struggling to breathe. The local medical facility could do little besides make her comfortable. "The atmospheric pollution," the doctor explained quietly. "Her lungs just can't process oxygen properly anymore." Marcus spent his days at the workshop and his nights at his grandmother's bedside. He read to her from old books about Earth before the wars, before humanity reached for the stars only to find themselves at the bottom of a new social hierarchy. "You shouldn't stay here for me," Mai told him one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your work is too important." "Nothing is more important than you, Gran," Marcus insisted, holding her frail hand. Mai smiled weakly. "The future is more important than any single life. Your father understood that. Your mother too." 3 days later, she slipped away peacefully in her sleep. Marcus sat beside her for hours, unable to move, unable to think beyond the emptiness that now filled their small home. The funeral was small, just a few neighbors and old friends. Afterward, Marcus returned alone to the silent apartment. It was while packing his grandmother's few possessions that he found the metal box under her bed. The lock opened with a soft click. Inside lay items he'd never seen before: a medal with unfamiliar markings, a small data crystal, and a handwritten note. The medal was tarnished but still caught the light, commendation for valor during humanity's first contact war. His father's name was engraved on the back. The note, written in his grandmother's careful script, read simply, "Never let them tell you what humans are worth." With trembling hands, Marcus inserted the data crystal into his tablet. Technical specifications and classified research filled the screen. His father's work, projects the consortium had buried decades ago. That night, Marcus worked with renewed purpose. The missing pieces of his design fell into place. By dawn, he had redrawn his schematics completely. What he was building now wasn't just an improved engine. It was something entirely new, something the consortium had actively prevented from being developed. 3 months later, Marcus stood before his completed prototype. The small engine hummed with a sound unlike any conventional drive, a perfect harmony of frequencies that made the air itself vibrate with possibility. When he ran the first test, the power readings broke his measuring equipment. The second test, with reinforced sensors, showed efficiency ratings that were theoretically impossible by consortium standards. Marcus stared at the results, then at his father's metal gleaming in the engine's blue light. "I'm going to need help to build the full-scale version," he said to the empty room. "And I know just who to ask." For the first time since his grandmother's death, Marcus smiled. This time, when he returned to Elysium, they wouldn't be able to ignore him. The small transport company's testing facility sat on the edge of New Seattle's industrial zone. Unlike the gleaming towers of the city center, this area was practical and weathered, built for function rather than appearance. A dozen people gathered in the control room, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors displaying a small craft positioned on the outdoor testing pad. "Are you absolutely certain about these parameters?" asked Kai Williams, the company's chief engineer. She studied the numbers on her screen with a furrowed brow. "These power levels should melt the containment field." Marcus nodded, dark circles under his eyes from the weeks of preparation. "The field won't fail. The entire design works on different principles than conventional drives. If you're wrong, we lose a 5 million credit testing platform," Kai reminded him. "And if I'm right," Marcus replied quietly, "you change the future of space travel." The small human-owned transport company, Horizon Shipping, had been skeptical when Marcus first approached them. But desperation had made them willing to listen. Consortium regulations and tariffs had pushed them to the edge of bankruptcy, unable to compete with the alien megacorporations that dominated interstellar shipping. Initiating test sequence, called the technician at the main console. Engine power at 10%. Outside, the small prototype craft, little more than his engine attached to a basic frame, hummed to life. The sound was different from conventional engines, more like a musical note than a mechanical roar. 20%, 30%. The monitoring equipment showed no strain, no heat buildup, no radiation leakage. The craft simply sat there, humming its strange tune as power levels rose. "Something's wrong with the sensors," Kai said, tapping her screen. "They can't be reading correctly." "The sensors are fine," Marcus assured her. "Continue the test. 50%, 70%, 100% power." A collective gasp filled the control room. At full power, the small craft should have been struggling to maintain stability. Instead, it sat perfectly still, a faint blue glow surrounding it as space itself seemed to bend slightly around its edges. "Initiating movement test," said the technician, her voice trembling with excitement. The craft rose smoothly from the platform, hovering 10 meters above the ground. Then it shot forward, reaching the edge of the testing zone in less than a second. It stopped instantly, with no deceleration period, then performed a series of complex maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional vessel. "This is impossible," whispered Kai, but her stunned expression had transformed into wonder. When the test concluded, the crowd in the control room erupted in cheers. Engineers who had spent decades working with conventional technology were suddenly seeing the rules rewritten before their eyes. Marcus should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt strangely hollow. His grandmother should have been here to see this, his parents too. This moment belonged to them as much as to him. "The final readings confirm it," Kai announced, her voice cutting through the celebration. "Efficiency rating at 340% of our best current drives. Mineral consumption reduced by 87%, not the 50% you projected. And she paused, double-checking her screen. No detectable emissions or radiation signature. The company's director, a heavy-set man named Gabriel Chen, no relation to Marcus, stepped forward. With this technology, we could undercut consortium shipping prices by half and still make a profit. We could reach the outer colonies in days instead of weeks. That's why I brought it to you, Marcus said. But there's a problem. The room quieted. The consortium won't allow it, Marcus continued. They'll claim security concerns or implement new regulations. They'll shut this down before we can get it to market. Gabriel's face fell. You're right. They've done it before. Which is why we need to make a statement they can't ignore. Marcus said, we need to show this technology to everyone, all at once, somewhere they can't hide it. The door to the control room slid open. A tall, gray-haired woman in a formal Earth Alliance uniform stepped inside. Everyone straightened instinctively at the sight of her insignia. Admiral Zhang, one of the few humans to achieve high rank in the Joint Defense Forces. I believe I can help with that, she said, her eyes finding Marcus immediately. The room fell silent as she approached. Marcus Chen, she said, not as a question but as a recognition. You look just like your father. Marcus stared at her. You knew my father. Admiral Zhang nodded solemnly. Lieutenant James Chen saved my life during the Proxima conflict. I've followed your family's progress ever since. She glanced at the monitors showing the test results. It seems brilliance runs in the family. She turned to address the entire room. In 3 weeks, the consortium is hosting its annual technology exhibition on Elysium Station. Every major corporate and political figure in 3 sectors will be there, including the Xelarian dealership that threw me out, Marcus added, understanding dawning. Admiral Zhang smiled. It wasn't entirely pleasant. As Earth's military representative, I'm permitted to bring a technical advisor to assess new technologies that might benefit human defense. She held out a small case containing official credentials and a formal Earth Alliance uniform. I believe you would be perfect for the role. Marcus took the case, feeling its weight in his hands. This was more than an opportunity for revenge or recognition. This was a chance to change the balance of power that had kept humanity and other lesser species struggling at the margins for generations. When do we leave? He asked. Tomorrow, Admiral Zhang replied. I hope you don't mind traveling on short notice. For the first time in months, Marcus felt something like hope. I've been ready to go back since the moment they threw me out. The Elysium exhibition hall gleamed under thousands of floating light orbs, each programmed to cast the perfect illumination on the luxury spacecraft displayed below. Marcus adjusted the collar of his Earth Alliance uniform as he and Admiral Zhang passed through the security checkpoint. His heart hammered in his chest, but his face remained composed. Remember, Admiral Zhang murmured, you are here officially representing Earth. Whatever happens, maintain your dignity. Marcus nodded. 6 months ago, he had been thrown out of this very station. Now he returned with diplomatic credentials and the most revolutionary technology the galaxy had seen in a century. The exhibition hall buzzed with activity. Representatives from every major species in the consortium mingled around displays of the latest luxury technology. Waiters circulated with exotic drinks and delicacies. The air smelled of wealth and privilege. The Xelarian presentation begins in 10 minutes, Admiral Zhang noted, checking the event schedule. Shall we find good seats? They moved toward the central showcase area, where a large crowd had already gathered. On the raised platform stood a sleek spacecraft that gleamed like liquid silver. Its lines were impossibly elegant, its materials rare and expensive. This was the Xelarian Nova X, the most anticipated luxury vessel of the year. Each Nova X is personally customized for its owner. A smooth voice announced over the sound system. No two are alike, and production is limited to just 12 vessels per solar cycle. The Xelarian manager stood at a podium beside the spacecraft, the same one who had dismissed Marcus months before. He wore an even more elaborate suit now, his silver eyes scanning the crowd with practiced charm. "The Nova X represents the pinnacle of consortium engineering," he continued. "Its proprietary drive system offers 30% greater efficiency than any competitor, with acceleration capabilities that no other personal craft can match." Marcus felt his palms grow damp. 30%. His system offered over 300% improvement. "We will begin taking reservations following the demonstration," the manager said. "The base price begins at 50 million credits, with customization packages available at additional cost." A polite murmur ran through the crowd. Even among the wealthy, this was an astronomical sum. "Before we proceed to the demonstration," the manager continued, "are there any questions?" Marcus looked at Admiral Zhang, who gave a slight nod. "I have a question," Marcus called out, his voice carrying clearly across the room. The manager's gaze shifted to find the source of the voice. When his silver eyes landed on Marcus, they widened slightly, then narrowed. "Yes, Earth representative," he said, his tone cooling noticeably. Marcus stepped forward, moving to the edge of the platform. "You claim a 30% efficiency improvement over current technology. What baseline are you using for comparison?" The manager's head tendrils twitched with irritation. "We use the consortium standard measure, of course. The same baseline all reputable manufacturers use. And if someone achieved not 30%, but 300% improvement?" Marcus asked. A ripple of surprised conversation moved through the crowd. "Such claims would be scientifically impossible," the manager said dismissively. "Perhaps Earth mathematics differs from galactic standards." Laughter rippled through the audience. The manager's mouth twitched in a slight smile. "I don't speak of theoretical possibilities," Marcus continued, climbing the steps to the platform despite the security guards moving to intercept him. "I'm speaking of actual, tested technology." The manager's expression hardened as recognition dawned. "You," he said, the translator unable to mask the disgust in his voice. "You're that engineer from the Southern District." "Marcus Chen," Marcus confirmed, standing tall. "Last time I was here, you refused to even look at my designs." "Security," the manager snapped. "Remove this person at once." Two guards moved forward, but stopped when Admiral Zhang stepped onto the platform. "This is Earth Alliance Technical Advisor Chen," she said clearly, her insignia of rank gleaming under the lights. "He is here under my authority and diplomatic protection." The security guards hesitated, looking to their manager for guidance. "Then what exactly is the purpose of this interruption?" the manager asked, struggling to maintain his composure. Marcus looked directly at the crowd, many of whom were now recording the unexpected drama. "I propose a challenge," he said. "My spacecraft against your Nova X, a direct comparison of all performance metrics, live-streamed across the consortium networks." The manager laughed, though the sound held no humor. "You expect us to pit our flagship model against some Earth contraption. Are you afraid of the comparison?" Marcus asked softly. The crowd murmured. Several prominent news drones had moved closer, sensing a story. "The Xelarians have never declined a formal challenge," called out a voice from the crowd, a Centaurian diplomat whose 6 eyes blinked with interest. "It would be unprecedented." The manager's head tendrils flushed blue with anger or embarrassment. He was trapped by tradition and protocol. "Very well," he said finally. "Tomorrow at midday, your craft against our Nova X. When you lose, you will publicly acknowledge Xelarian superiority and leave Elysium permanently." Marcus nodded. "And when I win, you will acknowledge my technology before all witnesses." "Agreed," the manager said with a cold smile. "I look forward to your permanent departure from Elysium." As Marcus and Admiral Zhang left the platform, the exhibition hall buzzed with excitement. News of the challenge spread rapidly across the station and beyond. "You realize what you've done?" Admiral Zhang asked quietly. "You've just guaranteed that every major power in the consortium will be watching tomorrow." Marcus nodded, feeling strangely calm. That was exactly the plan. The sky above Elysium Station's external testing grounds was clear of traffic, creating a perfect arena for the challenge that had captured the attention of 3 galactic sectors. Thousands gathered in person while billions more watched via live stream. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation and barely contained excitement. Marcus stood beside his craft, a stark contrast to the gleaming silver Novadex that dominated the center of the field. His vessel looked almost primitive by comparison, constructed from recycled parts with visible welds and patches. Where the Nova X was sleek and elegant, Marcus's ship was compact and utilitarian. Many in the crowd were already laughing, taking bets on how quickly the Earth vessel would be humiliated. "Quite the audience you've attracted," Admiral Zhang remarked, standing at Marcus's side. "The Consortium Central Council is watching. So are representatives from 17 independent worlds." Marcus nodded, his focus on the final system checks. "Is the data transmission secure?" "Yes. Whatever happens today, the technical specifications will reach every engineering hub across known space." The Excelarian manager approached, surrounded by an entourage of assistants and security. His silver eyes swept dismissively over Marcus's ship. "Unobligated to ask if you wish to withdraw your challenge," he said, his voice amplified for the crowd. "There would be no shame in recognizing the disparity in our vessels." Marcus looked up from his work. "The challenge stands." A slight ripple of approval moved through the crowd at his confidence. The manager's head tendrils twitched with annoyance. "Very well. The test parameters have been set. Each vessel will demonstrate speed, maneuverability, and energy efficiency. The results will be measured by independent consortium regulators." He gestured to a group of officials in formal attire. "Let us proceed." The Nova X went first. Its performance was flawless. It accelerated to impressive speeds, executed complex maneuvers with grace, and maintained stable energy readings throughout. The crowd applauded appreciatively as it completed the course. "Final metrics displayed," announced the chief regulator. The holographic scoreboard showed results that exceeded even the manufacturer's claims. The manager smiled confidently. "Your turn, Earth representative," he said, the words dripping with mock courtesy. Marcus climbed into his ship without a word. The simple cockpit had none of the luxury of the Novadex, just functional controls and a pilot's seat salvaged from an old Earth shuttle. "Begin when ready," came the regulator's voice through the comm system. Marcus activated his drive. The familiar hum filled the cockpit, not the roar of conventional engines, but a harmonious tone that made the air vibrate with possibility. He pressed forward on the controls. The ship responded instantly, leaping from standstill to a speed that made spectators gasp. The first checkpoint appeared ahead. Marcus didn't slow down. Instead, his ship seemed to bend the space around it, sliding through the tight turn as if friction and inertia were merely suggestions rather than laws. The second checkpoint required a complex series of maneuvers through floating markers. The Nova X had navigated it perfectly in 43 seconds. Marcus completed it in 12, his ship moving with impossible precision. For the final test, sustained high-speed travel, Marcus pushed his drive to full capacity. The stars themselves seemed to stretch around his vessel as it accelerated beyond what any civilian craft had achieved before. The crowd murmured. Several prominent news drones had moved closer, sensing a story. "The Solarians have never declined a formal challenge," called out a voice from the crowd, a Centaurian diplomat whose 6 eyes blinked with interest. "It would be unprecedented." The manager's head tendrils flushed blue with anger or embarrassment. He was trapped by tradition and protocol. "Very well," he said finally. "Tomorrow at midday, your craft against our Novadex. When you lose, you will publicly acknowledge Solarian superiority and leave Elysium permanently." Marcus nodded. "And when I win, you will acknowledge my technology before all witnesses." "Agreed," the manager said with a cold smile. "I look forward to your permanent departure from Elysium." As Marcus and Admiral Zhang left the platform, the exhibition hall buzzed with excitement. News of the challenge spread rapidly across the station and beyond. "You realize what you've done?" Admiral Zhang asked quietly. "You've just guaranteed that every major power in the consortium will be watching tomorrow." Marcus nodded, feeling strangely calm. That was exactly the plan. The sky above Elysium Station's external testing grounds was clear of traffic, creating a perfect arena for the challenge that had captured the attention of 3 galactic sectors. Thousands gathered in person while billions more watched via live stream. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation and barely contained excitement. Marcus stood beside his craft, a stark contrast to the gleaming silver Nova X that dominated the center of the field. His vessel looked almost primitive by comparison, constructed from recycled parts with visible welds and patches. Where the Nova X was sleek and elegant, Marcus's ship was compact and utilitarian. Many in the crowd were already laughing, taking bets on how quickly the Earth vessel would be humiliated. "Quite the audience you've attracted," Admiral Zhang remarked, standing at Marcus's side. "The Consortium's Central Council is watching. So are representatives from 17 independent worlds." Marcus nodded, his focus on the final system checks. "Is the data transmission secure?" "Yes. Whatever happens today, the technical specifications will reach every engineering hub across known space." The Exilarian manager approached, surrounded by an entourage of assistants and security. His silver eyes swept dismissively over Marcus's ship. "I'm obligated to ask if you wish to withdraw your challenge," he said, his voice amplified for the crowd. "There would be no shame in recognizing the disparity in our vessels." Marcus looked up from his work. "The challenge stands." A slight ripple of approval moved through the crowd at his confidence. The manager's head tendrils twitched with annoyance. "Very well. The test parameters have been set. Each vessel will demonstrate speed, maneuverability, and energy efficiency. The results will be measured by independent consortium regulators." He gestured to a group of officials in formal attire. "Let us proceed." The Nova X went first. Its performance was flawless. It accelerated to impressive speeds, executed complex maneuvers with grace, and maintained stable energy readings throughout. The crowd applauded appreciatively as it completed the course. "Final metrics displayed," announced the chief regulator. The holographic scoreboard showed results that exceeded even the manufacturer's claims. The manager smiled confidently. "Your turn, Earth representative," he said, the words dripping with mock courtesy. Marcus climbed into his ship without a word. The simple cockpit had none of the luxury of the Nova X, just functional controls and a pilot's seat salvaged from an old Earth shuttle. "Begin when ready," came the regulator's voice through the comm system. Marcus activated his drive. The familiar hum filled the cockpit, not the roar of conventional engines, but a harmonious tone that made the air vibrate with possibility. He pressed forward on the controls. The ship responded instantly, leaping from standstill to a speed that made spectators gasp. The first checkpoint appeared ahead. Marcus didn't slow down. Instead, his ship seemed to bend the space around it, sliding through the tight turn as if friction and inertia were merely suggestions rather than laws. The second checkpoint required a complex series of maneuvers through floating markers. The Nova X had navigated it perfectly in 43 seconds. Marcus completed it in 12, his ship moving with impossible precision. For the final test, sustained high-speed travel, Marcus pushed his drive to full capacity. The stars themselves seemed to stretch around his vessel as it accelerated beyond what any civilian craft had achieved before.